It's been 2 weeks since Russia started the invasion of Ukraine, calling it a special military operation. So many sanctions have been put on Russia that now Russia is the country with the most sanctions in the world. In fact, Russia also has been putting sanctions, retaliatory sanctions on the West. So, how does all of it impact India? How does it impact you and me? Let's find out in this video. So watch this video till the end and share it with your friends. Maybe they'll find it helpful too. So what is India's stance in this situation? Whose side is India on? And most importantly, कौन सी सिचुएशन में इंडिया का सबसे ज़्यादा फायदा होगा? Despite being forced to pick a side by US, Ukraine, Russia, EU members and all, India has decided to take a neutral stance in this situation. India has abstained in all the resolutions brought up in the United Nations, be it the Security Council or the General Assembly. In fact, India even refused to discuss the Ukraine issue in the Quad meeting that happened recently. So all in all, India ने कोई side pick नहीं की है, neither the West, neither Russia. And as of now, India की ये जो balanced and preventive approach है, ये best है. Because India जैसे ही कोई side लेगा, it will only be a lose-lose situation for India. So now you might ask, Rishabh, will India only lose at the end? So it's a lose-lose situation only if we pick a side. But if India is able to walk this tightrope and maintain this neutral stance, there are few major positives but also downsides to this, which we are going to discuss a little further in the video. But first, we need to understand that this is more than just a war. On ground, yes, Russia is invading Ukraine. They are fighting militarily. But actually this overall in the geopolitical arena is a power tussle between Russia and the West. And so basically India has to choose between Russia and the West, led by the United States. So now on one side we have Russia, a long-term ally of India. Russia has supported India's aspirations for a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council, has always supported India in UN on the Kashmir issue, and Russia in fact has also supported India in BRICS and SCO, which are heavily China dominated. Moreover, Russia is a very dependable partner of India in the defense sector. 86% of the weapons that India has come from Russia. And over the years, this relationship has evolved from being just a buyer and seller to joint research, design and development partners. The BrahMos cruise missile, 5th generation fighter jets and multi-role transport aircraft are the best examples of this. So going against Russia would mean that India would lose its one of the most important and strategic defense partners. And with growing ties between Russia and China, going against Russia would also mean that Russia will start favoring China and even supporting China against India in the future. On the other side, we have the United States, जिसके साथ India के relations have been improving a lot over the last couple of years. So much so that we've even made new strategic alliances through Quad. US and Quad के through, India has been able to plan active strategies to help counter the Chinese aggression and its expansionist policies, which we know is a huge problem for India. Also, EU is the third largest trading partner of India. And in this situation, even the EU is against Russia, imposing various sanctions on Russia. So openly going against the US and EU will result in heavy sanctions on India. In fact, even now, the US government is contemplating whether or not to include India under their CAATSA sanction, based on the recent purchase of the S-400 Triumph missile system from Russia. So now you can understand how grim of a situation it is for India. No matter which side we choose, नुकसान हमारा ही होगा. In fact, even now in this tug of war, you can see the effects on our stock markets, which have been very, very volatile. So now, while Ukraine is trying to fight Russia on ground, the West is trying to hit Russia economically. The US, UK and EU have imposed many sanctions on Russia already. Moreover, most major companies have halted their operations, services and sales in Russia. Russia is the third largest producer of oil in the world. In fact, 1/3 of Europe's oil and 80% of its natural gas supply comes from Russia. Sanctions से इन सभी imports पे effect पड़ेगा. Crude oil prices in the international market are at an all-time high. In fact, prices have gone beyond $130 per barrel. इंडिया में लास्ट ईयर ही पेट्रोल एंड डीजल के प्राइसेस 100 टच कर गए थे, एंड देन गवर्नमेंट रिड्यूस्ड इट्स टैक्सेस टू ब्रिंग द प्राइसेस डाउन. But after elections, the prices are again expected to go up, and this time the prices may even cross 110 or 115 rupees. And if the government decides to keep the prices of petrol and diesel stable, तो उनको टैक्सेस और कट करने पड़ेंगे. इससे उनके फाइनेंसेस पे एंड जो बजटिंग थी इस ईयर की उस पर बहुत ड्रास्टिक इफेक्ट आएगा. Prices of international cargo flights and ships may increase from 25% to 45%, and this will have a major impact on India's imports, which in turn will affect our wallets. जब भी फ्यूल का प्राइस बढ़ता है, इन्फ्लेशन भी बढ़ता है. This is because the transportation costs increase, which directly affects businesses. तो ट्रांसपोर्टेशन पे डिपेंडेंट जितनी भी इंडस्ट्रीज है उन सभी के सारे प्रोडक्ट्स एंड सर्विसेज के कॉस्ट बढ़ेंगे. इंडिया imports $2 billion worth of oils and minerals, $830 million worth of precious stones and metals, and $600 million worth of fertilizers directly from Russia. And now because of these sanctions, जितने भी imports हैं इन सब पे effect होगा. And this time around, we might not be able to work out a direct deal of Russia because this will attract heavy sanctions directly on India. Another sector which would be negatively impacted is the pharmaceutical industry of India. Ukraine imports a lot of pharma products from India, and in fact many Indian pharma companies have their offices in Ukraine. Our kitchens will also be impacted. 70% of India's sunflower oil comes from Ukraine, and because of the current situation, edible oils का price भी shoot up होगा इंडिया में. But of course, not all is dull and gloomy. There are some positives too. Domestic producers can step in and fill the gap wherever the imports are impacted. And if our government and the private companies play their cards right, we might even be able to increase our exports. Another huge opportunity for India is in the supply of wheat. Ukraine and Russia are the biggest suppliers of wheat in the world. In fact, that whole region is known as the bread basket of the world. अब इस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट की वजह से जो भी wheat supply में ड्रॉप आएगा, India can step in and fill that gap by selling wheat in the international market. Wheat के prices इस बार 9-year high पे हैं, and India में एक bumper harvest expected है. In the defense sector, because of heavy sanctions on Russia, our defense imports will take a hit. But again, domestic companies can take advantage of the Make in India campaign. In fact, last year itself, 1,500 companies were registered that wished to work in the Indian defense sector. Similarly, if in the future the war escalates and spreads to a wider area, the first industries to take a hit will be the European industries. Again, the Indian industries can ramp up and be a substitute. Many countries, being China averse, may even favor Indian products over Chinese products. And this is not something impossible. There was a time when Germany was called the pharma of the world. But in today's time, India's pharmaceutical industry is the largest in the world. And now India holds that title. There is another major issue which is surprisingly not being talked about a lot. There is another reason why India cannot take the side of Russia. India cannot agree, nor can it extend support to the Russia's claim on Crimea and the Donbas region. I mean, think about it. What did Russia do? Russia annexed Crimea. It sent its army, its tanks there, it annexed the whole area, and then conducted a referendum. Now, that referendum was not accepted by the West, but according to the referendum and according to Russia, majority people there voted that they wanted to be part of Russia. And so this was used as a justification for the Crimean annexation. Similarly, now Russia has declared the eastern part of Ukraine, the Donbas region, as independent based on the people's ethnicity and language, following which Putin started the special military operation, which we know has turned into a full-scale invasion, with the attacks going well beyond the Donbas region, reaching up to the capital of Ukraine. Doesn't this situation sound similar? Sounds like something closer to home? This situation is very similar to what we are facing with Pakistan on Kashmir or with China on the Ladakh region or the Arunachal Pradesh. Now imagine, say tomorrow China cites historical references or some made up referendums saying that the Ladakh region or the Arunachal Pradesh region belongs to China. And they call it a special military operation and they come sit with the military in Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh and they start bombing the regions around it. There's a full scale invasion that happens afterward. There will be a war between India and China. Or say similarly Pakistan. Pakistan might suddenly call a military operation and say that Kashmir belongs to them for whatever reasons they always state, and they come in and they start attacking us. Or like how they say we support Kashmir's independence, and so on the same pretext they come start attacking India saying that we want to make that region and help this region become independent. So then in this situation, what does India do? So if today India accepts or supports Russia in what it is doing in Ukraine, tomorrow we will surely face the same from either Pakistan or China or both. And India has always been against expansionist policies, be it China or be it Pakistan. And thus supporting Russia actually goes against our principles. So we cannot actually just go ahead openly accept what Russia is doing in Ukraine. Now coming to the situation where the West imposes sanctions directly on India. If this happens, India will be in a very, very grave situation. Now, as I mentioned earlier, US is already considering whether to include India under its CAATSA Act or not. Now, CAATSA stands for Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. And they have been contemplating whether it should be imposed on India or not ever since we have bought the S-24 Triumph missile defense system from Russia. Now this threat of putting sanctions directly on India by the West is kind of putting pressure on India to take their side. Because as of now, even taking a neutral stance is kind of being looked at as if India is taking Russia's side. But seeing the current diplomatic discussions that are going on, I don't think it will happen, but we'll have to wait and see. Because as much as India needs US to counter China, US also needs India to keep China in check. And this is more important for US because now Russia and China are getting even closer. And we are seeing stronger ties between Putin and Xi Jinping. And India being an important regional player in the Asia and the Indo-Pacific region, US definitely needs us as an ally. This whole situation is more than just a war between Russia and Ukraine. It is actually a test of power tussle between two very powerful nations, the United States and Russia, with other very powerful countries taking sides. The UK and the EU bloc siding with US and China kind of inching towards Russia. And let's not forget, China has its own problems with US. And at this point, India is stuck in the middle. And so every decision has to be very carefully thought out as it would determine our future. Emotions and sympathy cannot dictate our actions here. And India is not a tiny country anymore. Whatever stand we take, it matters in the global arena. And this can be seen with the amount of pressure that we are getting from both the sides. But India just cannot extend 100% support to one side without suffering a lot of damage from the other side. Best that India can do right now is to navigate this whole situation with lot of care. Take strong position on its principles, but at the same time must ensure that our interests are met. From what we are looking at right now, this is not the start of World War III. Every country is treading with caution and trying very hard not to escalate this situation that it becomes out of control. And if things do not get out of control, I think we can definitely prevent a nuclear warfare. But we can say one thing for sure. This is definitely the start of the Second Cold War. The world is now moving towards a new world order. New allies form हो रहे हैं and regional powers are becoming global powers. The world is moving from a bipolar system to a multipolar system. The best we can hope right now is that this situation stays under control and does not escalate to a full-fledged World War III. If you learned something new from this video and it helped you understand the current situation better and the impact on India better, give this video a like and share it with your friends. Also, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so that you do not miss any upcoming videos. आज के लिए इतना ही. I'll see you in the next video.